Hello, welcome, and sorry. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to another Maple Bitcoin Friday stream. One of these guys in the chat here looks a little bit different. About the same kind of a mustache, but a little more beard to him than Forrest has usually. So I'm Jor. I'm good, joined by my good buddy here, Rajat, and a new friend, Matt. And Forrest is away today. He's in the process of a move. We almost were missing Rajat today. So we recruited Matt to come on the show, and this one's titled How to Build Your Own Bitcoin Citadel. And I think that our regular viewers of the show here are going to get quite a bit out of this one today. I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So I'll hear about Matt in a couple minutes here, but how's the Friday going, boys? We don't celebrate Thanksgiving here in Canada, but I was scrolling through Nostra this morning and kind of a mistake looking at all the turkey dinners and everything going on. Pretty hungry. So happy Friday, boys. How's things there, Matt?
Yeah, another great Friday. These days, Fridays don't necessarily carry the same baggage as maybe 10, 20 years ago in my life, but yeah, another wonderful day.
Right on. So we got Matt is from Mysteries of the Bitcoin Citadel. He's done a bunch of interesting things in his life. You guys are definitely going to want to tune into this one today. We got word from Forrest here, Rajat.
Yeah, he was a little confused yesterday.
So shout out to Forrest. I'm sure he's watching. He just got a really busy weekend coming up here. He's in the process of
he's here
finding
with us.
His own. Was that Rajat?
He's here with us.
He's here with us for a couple seconds.
There you go.
But he's in the process of moving to his own new citadel. So I guess what the show's going to look like today, it's going to be a little bit different. We're not going to be covering too much news in terms of what's going on this week. We're going to just kind of dive right into it, I think. Matt, maybe we'll give you a couple minutes here to just kind of give a bit of a background in terms of where you came from. Matt's a former CPA like myself who got out of the rat race, and he's building a couple cool things and has a lot going on. So maybe, Matt, just give us what'd you call the TLDR? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second. I just wanted to say, even if you haven't watched our show before, if you're brand new or if you've been watching for a while, you're going to find this really valuable because what we're trying to show you here is, I don't know if, Matt, if you would call it this, but how to achieve financial freedom with Bitcoin. I think that's the key. Everybody wants to get away from their employer, and that's exactly what Matt has been able to do. He can not work for a very long time, and he'd be okay if you're okay with me saying that, Matt. But I think this is extremely valuable for people. I'm personally I want to learn from you as well, because that's exactly what I want to do. I'm in the process of trying to get to that point, and maybe you can answer our questions. Maybe we'll grill you with some questions here.
Yeah, it's sure. Sorry, Matt, just before you go here, I think that this is kind of what every Bitcoiner that I've ever known, like a Bitcoiner, their kind of end goal is to do something like Matt's doing right now. So this is going to be kind of like a blueprint show, some how-tos, some hacks maybe along the way. But yeah, Matt, just maybe kick things off with your background.
Sure, absolutely. So originally born and raised in Southwestern Ontario, went through, became a CPA, did that, corporate rat race, all that good stuff. And, by the age of 25, I hated the white collar grind. It just wasn't for me. Jor and I have talked about this in the past, but like still to this day, it's been, 9 years since I've had a corporate job, but like I still once a month have nightmares about having to fill out my timesheets. So anyone that's been in law or in accounting, like, that struggle, and like, it was soul sucking for me. So anyways, at the age of 25, I made a commitment to myself that I wanted to retire by the age of 35, just because I really hated timesheets that much, if you guys can believe it. And so essentially what happened was I was looking for different ways to figure out financial independence, stumbled into some really great blogs. So anyone that's really deep in like the financial independence, retire early communities, Mr. My Mustache, Early Retirement Extreme, those two were really my jam. And I used that as a blueprint, essentially, to figure out how to get control of my financial life. I was never a big spender to begin with, but it really just changed the entire way I looked at the problem of like having to earn a living. And so essentially 25 started aggressively buying real estate. It was perfect timing. So again, I'm not saying that like I was this genius and I knew exactly that the Canadian real estate market was on fire, but the numbers worked. And so again, always a numbers nerd because of the accounting background. And essentially, by the age of 31, I'd actually built up enough passive or semi-passive income with real estate investing to be able to quit my day job full time. Did that and essentially spent 6 months just kind of aimless. And so I think that's one thing that if you haven't spent time in the financial independence retire early community, a lot of Bitcoiners are likely overlooking is that for most of us, like our identities, our egos, and like our self-worth is often tied up in like our title or our job or our profession. And so stepping away from that really left me kind of just drifting through life. And so for 6 months, honestly, I didn't accomplish a lot. Then decided to start a YouTube channel and started networking aggressively with other real estate investors. And I just started learning all these new techniques and approaches that really allowed me to like 10x my investment strategy and started making like more money than I'd ever done before in that first year of like quitting the rat race. From that, in the YouTube channel, just like different businesses and opportunities kind of spiraled out of it. And everything, I was kind of on a certain trajectory. I was like, I'm going to build a giant empire, be one of the biggest real estate investors in Canada, all that good stuff. And then essentially COVID happened. And I don't know if you guys want to get super political, but essentially I didn't like what I saw going on in Canada during COVID. And I really started getting concerned because the whole point of my real estate investing and like building the businesses was to have control of my personal finances. And all of a sudden people are throwing out the idea of like rent moratoriums. Maybe tenants don't have to pay you rent. And it's like, well, let's pump the brakes because do I still have to pay my mortgage? All that. And so essentially, I just didn't understand. And I can literally remember there was like a Bank of Canada announcement and discussion. And I think it was September of 2020, where they're like, all this like spending we're doing, all the free money, it's not going to be inflationary. I was like, okay, like I'm a complete idiot because I don't understand how anything works if that's true. And so I was like, I'm going to sell everything. I've got enough to be happy. Sold all my real estate. And that's when I started really getting into Bitcoin because I wanted like financial sovereignty, right? Like that's what real estate was supposed to get me. That's why I wanted to quit the day job, was being controlled my entire life. And I realized that like, well, if the banks can just, push a lever or debank you and things of that nature, the Freedom Convoy also kind of was instrumental in me like wanting to really double down on the Bitcoin path. And essentially after selling everything in 2021, I bought a property up in Northern Ontario. It was an old hunting and fishing resort, called it, the Citadel Private Retreat, and essentially just turned it into like my own little private playground. And essentially anyone that's familiar with real estate will likely have heard of the concept of house hacking. And so just like a little tangent here, but in personal finances, it's not just what you make, it's what you save, right? Like you're never going to get ahead unless you're actually got like a surplus in regards to income and expenses. And so when you look at how like the average North American spends or like budgets, 40% of their income usually goes towards housing. And so that was always like the first spending category I wanted to get to zero. And so with house hacking, the whole idea is you buy duplex or bigger property, rent out the one side, live for free. And essentially you're now able to save 40%. But the other thing that's kind of interesting is like, it now means you need a lot less to save in order to like have more years of retirement. And so there's kind of like a function there that, again, if you've never really looked or played in a spreadsheet with this, it's easy to overlook. But essentially with that, I decided to like take house hacking to the next level and called it like resort hacking. And so the whole idea there was like a higher quality of life, right? And, most people, when they go on vacation, that's a peak experience. So what we've got up at the property at my Citadel is essentially it's 7 cabins. There's 8 or 10 RV sites, and then a couple interesting little glamping properties as well. And what's great about it for me is always been frugal. Didn't want to dramatically increase my personal spending, but still wanted to kind of have like an increase in quality of life. So really easy to justify owning a sauna or a hot tub or whatever sort of like luxury that maybe you want, but maybe it's hard to justify just for yourself, especially like single dude living alone. But all of a sudden when it's like, oh, well, I'm just like one person sharing in this amenity, things start to get interesting. So anyways, maybe that wasn't the quickest TLDR on myself.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah.
No, that was great. I feel like when you said there, the rent moratoriums, did anything happen to your property taxes? Were they still collecting?
Yes. And so like, just to be clear, like it didn't end up happening. It did happen temporarily in California. And it seemed like a lot, like especially Ontario and BC might lean that way. Eventually, thankfully, cooler heads prevailed and Canada didn't go like full commie on it. But like there was times where just the chaos, right? And like that's what's so frustrating about someone else really controlling your business or controlling your income or controlling your investments. And again, one of the like huge reasons that I'm a Bitcoin maxi these days.
Yeah, like this is the only asset where nobody else can dictate what you do with your money, or if there's no property taxes, so what are they gonna how are they gonna even take your value from you? They can't.
Matt, what's the website again? I know I've been on this computer. I was just going to bring it up so people can get a visual of it.
Sure, yeah. If you Google the Citadel Private Retreat, I think that should be the first result or one of the first results there. And again, like I'm not saying it's not Disney World or anything like that, but I just love it. It's a slice of heaven, in my opinion. And again, one of the things we were chatting before we jumped on the call is I think a lot of Bitcoiners aspire to this concept, right? And like for me, it was wanting to get out of the city, live a bit of a slower lifestyle, and at the same time, didn't want to necessarily like burn through my entire stack. So that's where the concept of resort hacking, I think, really lands, is this idea of like, well, let's still get the things I want, but maybe just in a more unique fashion, right? And using different tools to get there.
Yeah, this is sick. See, I feel like what you said there, it doesn't matter how much your income is. What matters is what your expenses are. If you could be earning $20 billion a year, but if you're spending $20 billion and $1, you're broke. You're in debt.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like that's most of society too. One thing I've noticed in the fiat system is that people get into these jobs. I mean, the three of us, two CPAs here. Rajat still is a CFA. I'm pretty sure, right? You still got your
Okay. They've tried to take it away from me multiple times.
But that's the one thing I've noticed in professional industries like that, where people kind of work so hard, they get into so much debt, and they start getting some promotions. They maybe buy a house, they maybe start having some kids, and then they get a raise, and they just immediately upgrade their life. And so they never really get further ahead. They're always just stuck in that same kind of hamster wheel over and over again. Every raise they get, every promotion they get, they just buy something new or renovate their kitchen or whatever it is. And then it just takes something so small in their life where it's just like their margins are just so razor thin that they can't handle any sort of, interruptions in it. And that's how people get financially wrecked. Even doctors and lawyers, like they just keep kind of upgrading their lifestyle as they get promoted. And it's just like, it seems like so razor thin in terms of what they actually have there.
I was thinking about this yesterday. So I think what most people try to do is, like, if you ask somebody, "Oh, what's your financial goal?" They're like, "Oh, I want to get out of debt." Right? And their goal is literally just to be at zero. So they don't plan to get above zero. Like, let's say, for example, let's like you said, they have some extra money, they go remodel their kitchen.
Yeah.
They have some extra money, they paint the house. They have some extra money, they buy some random stupid gadget. Right? Instead of putting that money towards their future, they need a reason to be spending. And that's what kills a lot of financial goals, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And these days, like one of the things that's like most heartbreaking, in my opinion, when it comes to personal finances is people being like, I can manage my payments. And it's like, yeah, no, that's the complete wrong approach to personal finances. It's just being like, well, there was $1 left over. I can manage like my payments and things of that nature. And again, it's where we see these like extended amortization periods, whether it's with like mortgages or with vehicles or like, now it seems like every time I'm like leaving my Amazon card and it's like, you can opt to 4 equal payments of $11 for this blender instead of like just buying it outright. And again, for a lot of people, just to be like frank, like we don't learn good financial skill sets, right? Like oftentimes like parents leave it up to the school system does nothing. And what ends up happening is like we end up becoming the default of just like the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? And so for a lot of people, if you're talking to your buddy and he's like, I just got a new giant pickup truck, oh, payments aren't that bad, it's only $1,000 a month, then that starts to become your normal. And that's where I think like communities like what you guys are doing with Maple Bitcoin is so important. It's just like, no, like change your peer group and that'll immediately change your outlook on everything.
Yeah, saving a couple $100s a month on your car doesn't seem like a lot, but man, that adds up super quick, especially if you're putting it in Bitcoin. By the time you're done your term, like let's say you have an 84-month term, you're spending $1,000 a month on your car. I mean, that's possible. A lot of people are in that position. But if you cut that down a little bit, let's say, for example, let's say you keep the 84-month term. I don't care about that. But you find a car, instead of paying $1,000 a month, you find one that's $800 a month. And then you put the difference in Bitcoin. By the time that 84 months is over, you might have actually paid off the car anyways. Just a different way to think.
So it's such an underrated way to look at it, because personally, I finally have a vehicle that I paid off, the first one in my life. And I think it was about $500 or $600 a month. And so think about that like an income, right? People think is like they're kind of saving money. So you're saving $500. No, that's income. And if you consider income taxes into that, you'd have to get paid about $800 more per month at your job to get the same net amount of income there. Cause that's what it is. It's less expenses equals higher net income. And I don't feel like enough people kind of think of it that way.
Yeah, it's true.
So Matt, maybe let's just start. I think the most obvious place to start here would be when you were making the decision to switch from real estate into Bitcoin. That seems like a pretty bold move. I know there's a lot of, just looking at the comments in my YouTube channel, there's always realtors in there. There's always people who have real estate, basically calling Bitcoin, magic internet money. You can hold it. It's nothing physical. It's not real. So how'd you land on the decision to swap out all of your real estate, which you worked pretty damn hard and it fared pretty well for you? That's a pretty big move, man. A pretty bold move to swap that into Bitcoin. What was the logic there?
Yeah. And again, it's often easy to want to like oversimplify and be like, was this one light switch moment where like everything changed. But I'd been Bitcoin interested or curious for a while. So like back in 2017 is when it started to like seriously get on my radar. And I ended up actually like hosting, at the time, we just called it a blockchain meetup because that was a very common word.
Yeah.
And did that for like a year. Then the market kind of corrected and, everyone was like, Bitcoin, whatever. And for me, one of the biggest limiting beliefs I had around Bitcoin was, with real estate, what I loved was I felt like I was in control. So I could run the numbers, I could figure out how to maximize the income, try and minimize expenses and increase the spread on that investment. Where what I hated about the idea of stocks was I was completely beholden to like the board or the CEO or like the day-to-day fluctuations of just the sentiment and the general market. And so those were definitely limiting beliefs I had when it came to Bitcoin. And then just over time through osmosis, getting exposed to more stuff, I started to open up to and be like, there is something kind of neat about this money that like no one else can touch, or at least that's what it sounded like in theory. And then as I learned more, I was like, yep, this seems pretty legit. But again, COVID was really just an eye-opening moment. One of the big kind of like businesses I had was buying houses off of people directly without a realtor. So we actually did a lot of like flyer campaigns, and we'd even go like door knock neighborhoods we wanted to invest in and say like, hey, we're looking to buy houses in this neighborhood. And because of the unique strategies we use, we had like outpaced success. But what happened was like for a year, the idea of like knocking on someone's door was literally like antithesis to Canadian kind of sentiment at that point in time. Right. And so it's like, how am I going to pay these people? How am I going to get through this next payroll cycle and things of that nature? And so I ended up just taking a step back and really asking myself, like, why was I doing this? Right. And it always did come back to financial independence, retiring early and being in control of my own life. And I realized at that moment in time when, they were floating out the idea of rent moratoriums in Canada and things of that nature, is like, well, okay, let's take a step back. Let's really think about like, how can I build a stronger fortress of solitude? And so it ended up being like everything kind of kept leading towards Bitcoin. And I just started, again, use the same sort of like strategy I did with real estate, started going to a bunch of events, started reaching out to anyone that was kind of like a Canadian Bitcoin influencer and stuff like that, and learning more and trying to humbly approach it. And at the same time, like I did have a lot of real estate investments, so over 100 doors, right? That's kind of a metric that a lot of people use when it comes to real estate. And I just went to my business partners and said like, hey, if you want, think of it as Matt going through a psychotic break, because I'm literally reinterpreting my entire like perspective on reality here. But like I thought I was in control, and now I'm starting to really question if I ever was. And through that, I started to realize that again, having control of my financial future was really important to me. And I think it should be important to a lot of people, but regardless, it's definitely important to me. And so everything just kind of kept circling back to Bitcoin. And that ended up being the thing where I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a couple years off, sell everything, take a step back, buy the Citadel, have a good quality of life, and just invest my time like trying to learn more about Bitcoin. Because if this was like a once in a lifetime opportunity, or like these days I almost refer to as a once in a species opportunity, is like, well, I saw what happened with the internet. And like I kind of came into YouTube and social media midway, right? So 2016 is when I started doing it seriously. And like I had some good friends build massive businesses and empires out of it. Those that are familiar with me know that like my buddy Graham Stephan, he's gone on to do like huge things with it. And like, I honestly didn't see the opportunity to that scale. And so I started being like humbly being like, well, if I missed the giant boat that was social media, I'm not saying I didn't do well on social media, but like I miss even more upside with it. I'm probably doing the same thing with Bitcoin. And so again, just like investing that time and energy just became more and more important to me the more I learned about it. And ultimately, that goal of freedom or independence was always just like a core aspect of my personality.
Yeah, I think some of the people in the comments are confusing what you're saying with buy real estate if you want the freedom, but I think you clarified that's not true.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm kind of literally saying the opposite, just to be
Yeah,
clear.
yeah,
But that being said, I do know there's a lot of Bitcoiners that have extremely strong opinions when it comes to real estate.
yeah,
To me, it's just people respond to incentives. And so our government and policymakers and regulators have set up the incentives to honestly encourage a lot of Canadians to look at real estate as a means to financial independence. I still
yeah,
think you can accomplish it. I'm not saying that like real estate's going to zero tomorrow or anything like that. But at a minimum, for people that are, aggressively investing in real estate, I do think look at like at a minimum a Bitcoin treasury policy, right? And like sincerely approaching it, not just trying to like day trade Bitcoin or anything like that, but like stack your profits in Bitcoin is
Yeah.
still a great opportunity there. But for people that are using real estate to get financial freedom, I think ultimately like you may want to start, allocating more and more over time into Bitcoin. Just because it to me, there's like 100% sleep at night factor. The only reason
yeah,
I know of price fluctuations is because like people DM me because they now kind of think of me as their Bitcoin friend. But outside of that, like it doesn't have to impact your life, the volatility that we currently see in Bitcoin. And I think like last week or 2 weeks ago, I was watching one of your guys' shows, and you were kind of saying that as well. That like you don't have to be 100% allocated to Bitcoin, but depending upon your time preference, I think it
Yeah.
makes sense to want to go heavily into it.
yeah. Have at least some. Like even let's say for example, you have any kind of business. You have, let's say you have an accounting business. If you just start saving your excess capital in Bitcoin, you're gonna be the best accounting business in the world. You can be the most profitable accounting business in the world because your Bitcoin is working for you while you're working for yourself. Your Bitcoin is multiplying your efforts. That's I think that's the main takeaway here. It not only so in fiat, you put in the effort once, you get the fiat and it's gone. Like you have to do something else
Yeah.
to retain just to retain that effort. It's not even like you're working like your money is working for you. All you can do is try to maintain the amount of money that you have. With Bitcoin, it's outperforming the current rate of inflation. It's outperforming everything. It's outperforming the amount of effort that you can put in, right? That's one of the best things about Bitcoin. So if you have real estate, I mean, if you've seen my tweets, I'm not sure if you have, Matt, but I don't like real estate as an investment. I hate real estate as an investment, but you're not using it as an investment. The way that you're using it is you're creating value to people. You have a business essentially, like your Citadel, I said the Citadel. You have a business. You're helping other people to be able to enjoy their lives as well, and you're getting some value out of it. You're helping them by maintaining that property. It's not like you're extracting value from them. It's not like you have 1,000 rental properties and then you're getting people to pay you, and then you like your only goal is to earn interest or to earn rent. That's not the goal here. Your goal is to make yourself financially free by helping other people by creating value for them. That's extremely valuable.
And again, one last thing, just because I can't help myself on the subject of like real estate and Bitcoin and all that, is like, again, like the idea of renting property is as old as the idea of private property in the first place, right? So the moment
Yeah,
someone had private property, someone else wanted access to it. So that concept isn't going away. But I think that
yeah,
where often a disconnect occurs between real estate investors and Bitcoiners is understanding that like either fiat currency is eventually going to zero, or we're going to adopt something better like a Bitcoin standard. And
yeah,
on something like a Bitcoin standard, real estate still has its place. There's still a business there to be had, but it's going to look so dramatically different. So again, anyone familiar with my real estate content, I was always focused on value add. So like we
mm,
weren't just literally trying to like buy a property, have rentier income, and we're just like making a tiny margin. It was about like finding underappreciated assets, right? Bringing them up to their highest, best potential use, and then operating the business successfully based upon that. Where I think I totally get why a lot of Canadians view real estate investing as just buying a GTA condo and crossing your
yeah,
fingers that it goes up next year. And that was sold to a lot of people. There was a lot of conferences and events and influencers that were pushing those things. Again, usually when you look deep into the incentives, they weren't actually practicing what they preached. They were making money off of preaching it versus like practicing it.
yeah. And one thing that actually you mentioned that the real estate market will probably be different. I think let me know what your thoughts are on this. I think that cap rates are going to rise massively, because I think right now real estate is massively overvalued, and it shouldn't take you like 20, 25, 30 years to get your money back. I think that cap rates should be at like 12%, 13%, 15%. Rentals, the cost of renting should actually go up. What do you what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like in principle, I agree. So
Yeah.
I do think that, and again, it's a very complex subject if you really want to get into like accuracy. But essentially, like what a lot of people misunderstand or misinterpret is like how much influence government and policy has in
Yes.
regards to the returns in real
Yeah.
estate, right? So whether it's CMHC, whether it's literally just like the big banks being too big to fail, what it ends up doing, and like again, unfortunately, a lot of people associate home ownership with like the penultimate success in personal life. And so, because of these different things, like government responds to incentives based upon their voters, voters are responding to their perceived incentives that are set by policy and regulators. And so, what ends up happening is like it's almost impossible to truly know what it would look like on a Bitcoin standard. But like, I am positive that private property will still exist on Bitcoin standard, that people will still want access to other people's private property, and there will be an opportunity to make money there. But I do think it'll look much more like an active business, whether that's like owning a pizza shop or being a hairdresser or whatever, versus the idea of like, oh, I'm really just like making a slight spread here, or this is like an inflation hedge. I think that that's the thing that frustrated me once I started to really understand Bitcoin or Grok it, versus like what a lot of the people that followed me for real estate advice didn't necessarily understand. Again, and we'll see how it all plays out. I can't predict the future, but like I suspect that there'll be like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not going to be like the light will just flip one day and we're on Bitcoin standard. It's going to be a
Yeah.
slow bleed, but I do expect a lot of the capital that's tied up in real estate to seek better returns. And so either they'll demand better returns from real estate or they'll go to other areas.
Yeah, I think the long-term trend here is that Bitcoin is going to reprice everything, and that it kind of already is. And I think that's important to kind of note that even though nobody really measures the world in terms of Bitcoin yet, and like real estate, land, vehicles, products, everything like that, if you actually look at those comparisons of a house cost 400,000 and 2020, now it's worth 600,000, but at the time it was 1,000 Bitcoin, now it's 5 Bitcoin. Bitcoin already is repricing everything, including real estate. And that's why I think that just now, especially, real estate might not be overvalued in the sense of fiat, but it's extremely overvalued when you're deciding between real estate and Bitcoin, because not only is real estate, in my eyes, way overvalued in terms of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's extremely undervalued because it's so misunderstood by the population as a whole right now. And in turn, just kind of going along those lines with the real estate, I think it's also important to note that in Canada, because I used to have a rental house myself. I cashed out my rental house kind of at the same time that you did, I think, Matt, when I got the real easy or uneasy feeling in my stomach that I just don't really like the direction of things, where they're going in Canada here. I don't necessarily trust the government in a lot of ways. And I think that real estate owners, if they understood what's behind the curtain in Bitcoin, I think that they'd feel a little bit differently about it. But just for myself personally, when I was thinking about everything, looking a couple years out, I was thinking like I might actually have to leave this country. And I knew that if I had to leave this country in a hurry, it would be such a pain in the ass to try to sell this rent house. I can't take it on an airplane. But then I realized that Bitcoin, you can store it kind of in your head. If you understand it and you protect it properly, you can easily hop on an airplane. So it's not just like the government controls and the regulations and things like that. It's just complete flexibility and sovereignty, in the sense that if you don't like the direction of where things are going, Bitcoin is the perfect hedge for that, because you can literally hop on an airplane, fly anywhere in the world, and recover your Bitcoin. You can't do that with anything else.
Yeah, completely agree. Literally having no third party that you need to get permission from in order to access your wealth is just like it. Honestly, like that sentence that I just said, like does a disservice, because it's truly a revolutionary
Yes.
idea. And I think for a lot of people, the great thing is about Canada, we've lived in a high trust society for a very long time. And fingers crossed, I hope that continues.
Yeah.
But like, I don't love the trend necessarily that I see in a lot of Western democracies. And again, I think that it is something that with time, different people will come to these conclusions that we're kind of chatting about right now, where it's like, yeah, having a little bit more portable wealth is important to my just long-term flexibility.
Yeah. And I think about Jack Mallers. He talks about this all the time, and so do other people. Saylor They talk about how real estate, and especially since 1971, since we went off the gold standard, that's when real estate really became a store of value as opposed to a utility asset where people would actually live in the house. But because the dollar has been detached from anything that's real, people have been using real estate as a place to store value. And that's why I think the three of us think that it is so incredibly overvalued for that reason, is because people aren't using it as what it was designed to be. People aren't using these houses to live in. They're using it because they don't trust their government and their money printing habits. And so if you look at the worldwide assets as $900 trillion and 450 trillion of that being inactive, I see that that's in short term, let's say short to medium term. I feel like Bitcoin is going to be the home for the majority of that capital that's not being actually utilized by anything. It's just hiding in bonds in the stock market and the real estate market as a store of value. And as people learn that Bitcoin is by far the best store of value, that's the opportunity here, I think.
Wait, what do you mean by it's not active? Do you mean like it's passively purchased, like people are buying index funds,
Yeah,
just holding bonds that? Oh, so would you say that real estate, actually, I guess real estate investing is pretty active.
I think it depends, right?
right.
I think it depends on how you define it. So, like the dude swinging a hammer that bought like a shitty house and he's going to fix it up and make it beautiful, like that's very active, and he's going
Yeah,
to rent it out or flip it.
right.
But the person that's like buying a REIT, that's obviously like really passive or very similar to an index fund. And then there's a huge spectrum in between. But
Well,
yeah, I do
well
think that like again, this isn't going to be unique to real estate either. I think that as the economy catches up and just as like people start to interpret Bitcoin differently, like every business is going to have to step up their game, right? Because like the question is going to be like, why should I invest in Nvidia instead
right.
of like just holding Bitcoin? Particularly when that digital scarcity again is something that for like real estate investors, it should actually come natural to you because it's the scarcity of real estate that like makes it valuable. And yet for a lot of people, I think honestly, it's just again, ego gets in the way of like I've outcompeted all my peers because I invest in real estate. So like what is there to learn about Bitcoin? And that's where
Hmm.
like the humility that you often hear Bitcoiners talk about is important, just to approach it with fresh eyes. The thing I try and always encourage people to do is like literally just spend 10 hours. You can afford to invest
Yeah.
10 hours and start learning about it. And I think by that moment in time, you'll then be willing to invest 100 hours.
There's just so much crap out there, though. Like, I feel like if somebody had 10 hours to spare, they might watch 10 hours of just nonsense. So I feel like that's a potential
True.
problem with
And
it.
so I'm usually like pushing them the Bitcoin standard or like
Yeah.
BTC sessions and stuff like
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
get them very specific in their education. So
Right.
yes, absolutely, the information you seek does need to be high quality, but there is great signal out there.
Yeah. I think that kind of going back to the active versus non-active stuff, like I 100% agree in terms of like even you, Matt, like when you were actually um, intentionally seeking out properties that you felt like you could revive and get their true quality out of, I would say that that's pretty active. But I would say that there's a lot of people with a lot of money who will just buy like this house in Vancouver or in Toronto because they know that it's going to go up in price. Nobody's living in it, nobody's renting it out. It's literally them just buying a property and it's sitting inactive. Like that would be the far end of the scale in terms of the inactivity of real estate. And which that's a huge problem too, because it drives up demand and pricing artificially in a sense, because people are using these assets like real estate, like what I'm talking about here, specifically for a store of value versus for the utility of a house.
Agree.
Um, the other thing I was going to say, Matt, is like, I'm pretty interested because the fact that you went from real estate and like going through all these different courses and networking things and conferences and having so much invested into real estate. And then all of a sudden, I guess it probably wasn't like the snap of your finger, but you had enough of, you put your ego to the side and said, even though I've invested all this time and energy into real estate, I'm going to try to replicate this in the Bitcoin world. So when you were going through that, like what were you doing when you were trying to find people to talk to about Bitcoin? Were you just literally Googling local Bitcoin meetups or people who are interested in Bitcoin, or what was that process like?
Yeah, totally. So going to like meetup.com and just other websites that usually like had events and things of that nature, attending them, going to the Canadian Bitcoin conference. I forget, but the first year I think was 23 or 22, whenever that was, going to it. And for me, it was about trying to find my tribe. Because again, I literally believe I'm the average of the 5 people I spend the most time with. It's just like that's a default setting I buy into. And so I knew I wanted to surround myself with more Bitcoiners because I really want to not just like understand the thesis of investing in Bitcoin, but there's a lot of things that I consider like Bitcoin adjacent. So again, like oftentimes with Bitcoiners, you'll see them maybe have an affinity towards like a local or community or homesteading or homeschooling. And there's a lot of these things that I think are complementary. And so one of the ways like I started trying to explain it to friends and family about Bitcoin is like Bitcoin to me isn't like the silver bullet that's going to save the world, but it's the platform that would allow us to build a better world. And so it's still up to us to like actually put in the work and make the world a better place. It's not like you can just hold Bitcoin and count on the world becoming better tomorrow. Your individual situation might be, but like usually we want something a little bit bigger than ourselves. And so that's where we're seeking that sense of community with Bitcoiners. And from that, again, it is a different experience for anyone that's gone to like personal development or real estate networking events. Way different vibe than Bitcoin. Because one, you know, Bitcoiners are naturally a little bit more OPSEC oriented or a little bit more privacy oriented. So like sometimes you'll get like weird answers the first time you go to a Bitcoin meetup, or like they'll be eyeing you like maybe you're a Fed or something. But if you're willing to like consistently show up and just again humbly interact with them, they're some of the most earnest people I've ever met, right? So like that being said, like once you earn a Bitcoiner's trust, it goes a lot further, I think, than the average person's trust. And yeah, so it was really just about trying to meet people and learn from them and understand where they're going with it. And so I guess one of the things I'd be interested in hearing from you guys is like whether you guys do like attend a lot of in-person events and what your general experience is there. Because with real estate investing, whenever I went to a networking event, I could quickly judge whether it was a success or not, right? Like, did I find a new private lender, right? Are they going to give me a bunch of money or like a new partner to do a deal with? Or did they teach me a new strategy that's going to allow me to make more money? Where honestly with Bitcoiners, like I'm usually just like hanging out and shooting the shit. And so sometimes it feels a little bit less productive. But again, that's that rapport building and building of relationships, in my opinion.
The last time I went to a Bitcoin conference was the Canadian Bitcoin conference, and then the one before that was with Jor in Vegas. In the I think in the Canadian Bitcoin conference, I got a lot more of a connection with people who were building businesses. So there was one guy who wanted to start basically like a Bitcoin mortgage company where you would put up your Bitcoin as collateral, and he would give you enough money as a mortgage to pay for your house, which was really, really cool. And there were other ways of doing things. I feel like the conferences are great if you can build connections with people. But even then, I mean, other than the connections, it's just so bullish to see all these people who are like just a random person talking about, oh, the inflation rate isn't real. And it's like, how many times do you see that in real life? You don't, right? And when I was waiting at the Vegas conference, that was the first conference that I went to, in line, people were like, and this, keep in mind, this is me just, I'm just listening to this conversation. This is a random person in line behind me with his friend. And he's like, have you noticed how the quality of movies has fallen? This is debasement. I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is where I'm meant to be. It just makes you so bullish. It makes you see like, oh, there are other people who think exactly the same way as me. And if anything, if it's not to build the relationships and to see like what I can do with with Bitcoin, with other people, with other Bitcoiners, if anything, it's just to see how other people think. I feel like that's just, it's an amazing feeling hearing other people having like the exact same thoughts as you. And the only thing that brought you together was this fake internet money, orange coin, thin air. Like that's what brought you together. If anything, like the way that I see it, even if Bitcoin fails, if this thing goes to zero, the worst case scenario is that we built these relationships. Like me and Jor, man, we're gonna be talking. If Bitcoin goes to zero, we're gonna be like, oh, what do you think the next thing is, right? Matt, maybe you're gonna join the tribe, right? It's just we're gonna be talking about this thing. We still have the same mindset. It's not like Bitcoin is the foundation of that mindset. We built that mindset before Bitcoin, and now Bitcoin is the thing that just brings us all together. I think that makes it extremely, extremely bullish.
That's what that's a perfect way to say it. Is that's what makes me so excited about Bitcoin, is that it's way more than just a money. It's way more than just, it's the network. It's really what it is. And it's actually so much bigger than that. It's a global awakening that's happening right now. And I think that even if you look back 10 years ago, if you look at Thanksgiving in 2015, how many people could tell you how corrupt the media was, or the governments are, or big pharma is, or the central banks. Hardly anybody. And so it's not like this, it's all or nothing on Bitcoin. It's like once you see the system for what it is, you're never the same. And I just feel like that every day there's more and more people who are joining this network. And when you go to things like that, you see it, you actually experience it with your own eyes. And it doesn't really matter what the price is. You just kind of think to yourself, this is unstoppable. This is something much bigger than the fiat price that they tell you. This is a movement that will not be stopped. And it's pretty cool to be kind of at the forefront of this whole thing, honestly, because I think they're going to look back in 20, 50, 100 years from now and not only give anything that they could trade $1 for 1,000 sats at that time, but just to be part of this, to be part of the building and seeing everything that we get to see right now. Like it's truly incredible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one little thing I'd love to add on to that is, one of my little personal philosophies is the only investment I feel confident will outperform Bitcoin is Bitcoin friendships.
Yeah.
Like straight up, Bitcoiners are, in my opinion, based upon my personal thesis, like they're going to become the elites of tomorrow. They're going to become upstream of a lot of culture and just different impacts and policy and things of that nature. And so again, the time you invest building these relationships today, like I really do think they'll pay dividends down the road.
100%. And I, this is something I've been thinking more and more about recently, but I don't think people understand, what this is going to be worth in the future. And if you think, we talked a lot about networks and communities and going to things like this and finding your tribe, and you are the average of the people you surround yourself with. People, I think, are really underestimating how much wealth is going to be in these communities. Like, I really see the people that I'm talking to on the screen and in the chat and in the Maple community and the visionaries. Like, I see them as future billionaires because they are. As long as they don't mess this up, as long as they can protect the Bitcoin that they have today. I don't care if they have 1 Bitcoin or 5 or even half a Bitcoin. Over a long enough time frame, these people are going to have significant amount of wealth. And that's the people that you want to surround yourself with and kind of build with alongside. So yeah, it's I just feel like, Matt, you would have had to go through such like I don't know if humbling is the right word, but after going through so much in real estate and so much time and energy investment, really just to say, hey, I don't know anything about Bitcoin. I want to learn. And I feel like the best way to learn is just by talking to other people. And I really think that one of the most powerful and underrated things in Bitcoin, and I would encourage everybody who's watching the stream today in the chat later, join a community. And it doesn't have to be the Maple Bitcoin community, but I actually would suggest paying for a community just because there's so much spam and crap and like the free ones, like the Telegrams and the Discords. Just consider it an investment because you're going to be hanging out with future billionaires. And if you can kind of get on, you can't buy people's trust. You can't buy your reputation. It's something that can only be earned through time. And so if you just keep kind of putting it off and putting it off, you're just going to kind of fall further behind, I think. And what's been your experience with that, Matt, through the different communities? I think the one thing that really stood out for what you said there is like real estate conferences, networking. It just seemed really high time preference almost. Like if nothing happens this weekend, then I'm probably not going to, see this person again or hear from them again. Whereas Bitcoiners, it's a very much longer term lens. It's like, yeah, it's just nice to talk to people who are in the same kind of frequency as you. That's kind of a win in itself, I think. But it just seems like more of a longer term play. So what's been your kind of experience with the communities and the networks, and what kind of impact it's had on you?
Yeah. And before even getting into that, just on the subject of like whether a free community or paid community or whatever, like, again, I come from a background where I paid a lot of money at different times to get into rooms for real estate networking in particular. But ultimately, like, you do pay one way or the other, right? So like the way if you join free communities, you end up paying is by having to sift through a lot of garbage, right? And like question a lot of people's intentions. And are they even Canadian? Are they even North American? Are they from somewhere else in the world? And this is just a low time preference scam where they're hoping to eventually, get me to open up. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of value there in finding your tribe. However you get there, just get there. And one thing is like to sample, right? And like allow yourself to be exposed to these different communities. With Bitcoiners, again, like I did find it a lot harder to network just because like there's less of like a very, and this is going to sound wrong about the real estate networking stuff, but like it's more transactional, where it's like, hey, I can teach you this, you can lend me that, or whatever. Where
Yeah.
Bitcoiners, it's a lot more like, hey, I'm trying to figure out my life, or I'm trying to understand like the journey I want to go on. How's your journey going? Things of that nature. And I think one thing that a lot of people maybe misunderstand about Bitcoin networking events is like, Bitcoin gets talked about a bunch, but like there are other things too. So all those other adjacent philosophies I chatted about, and that to me is what really resonated or like stood out to me. So like made some amazing friends through Bitcoin, got into some like great little, private signal chats or Telegram chats and things of that nature. But you do have to earn those Bitcoiners' trust, right? And again, even if it's a free signal chat you're joining, like you probably have to go to multiple meetups in order to get the invite or earn that person's trust or whatever the case may be. And so I think that that's where just like, again, like humbly approaching these events is just so valuable for the average person. And for a lot of us, like you're probably in your day-to-day life, the person that's most all in on Bitcoin, and your friends and family, maybe, they're a bit more standoffish, or they're tired of your shtick of telling them about how, the orange coin's going to change the world. And so it's so refreshing just to be around those like-minded individuals. And again, that's even what I experienced with real estate investing and networking, was like, oh shit, there's people out there like me. Like they're the same sort of crazy I am. And like when you can find that tribe that's the same sort of crazy as you, like it is so empowering. And like all of a sudden you'll start doing things that you never thought before. So there's this concept in personal development of like the Roger Bannister effect. And so Roger Bannister, the first guy to ever run a 4-minute mile. Before that, everyone knew it was physically impossible for a human to do it. And then this high school teacher just did it, like trained for it, did it eventually. And then within a couple of years, a ton of people were setting it. And like today, my understanding is that like a really good high school athlete could potentially do that 4-minute mile. And for me, like going out to Bitcoin networking events and like meeting Bitcoiners that aren't just like sitting on their laurels. So they're not just like sitting on a fat stack and then waiting for Bitcoin to go to 1 million. Like they're angel investing, or they're getting involved in politics, or they're doing this, that, and the other. And that to me, again, is such a more pleasant version of the future versus like, I'm naturally a bit of a prepper or doomer. Like the world's going to fall apart and everything's going to be terrible, and we're going to live in a low trust society, and like it'll never be as good as it was in the 90s. And it's like, no, like we can choose to build these communities. And what's great is like Bitcoiners are actually going to have the resources and the level of commitment to execute on these things. And so, whether it's like Bitcoin Jungle or Bitcoin Beach or all the interesting communities that are starting to crop up now, like this is literally like tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. There's like over the next 10, 20 years, there's going to be so many unique Bitcoin oriented projects. And like, I just want to get exposed to more of those. So that's one of the big things I'm trying to like expose myself to at these Bitcoin networking events. And like, one of the things like I've started telling myself is just like, I call it like anyone that's familiar with like the pickup artist community or things of that nature, there's the idea of like a shit test. And so a shit test was just like testing someone's boundaries essentially, or like putting them outside their comfort zone. And like, that's kind of what I like doing with Bitcoiners now, because like they're so open-minded, being like, we should just do this thing, like what's stopping us from doing this thing? And there's a lot more yes and, in my opinion, amongst Bitcoiners. They'll absolutely challenge you if they think you're wrong, but like there's a sincerity often behind that once you get through some of the toxic trolling.
Yeah. I think.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with all that. And that's one thing I've noticed through talking to Bitcoiners. And that's kind of what got me towards Bitcoin, because I kind of went down the rabbit hole of like losing trust in the system. That was kind of the first thing. And then I went to silver and gold as kind of like the escape hatch from that. And then I started looking to like the digital stuff. It's pretty obvious where the world's going in terms of technology. And keep in mind, like 5 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been doing this call. Like the fact that everybody's so comfortable with Zoom and like streams like this is pretty brand new. So I was like, well, maybe I should just look into this crypto stuff. But that was kind of the main thing that really drove me to Bitcoin, was just the vibe of Bitcoiners. And you could almost feel it just by listening to people speak, that they weren't really in it just for the wealth and the money and the get rich quick kind of thing. It was more about like, we're going to change the world here, which is, kind of insane to think about. And if you look at the last 100 years and how much friction there's been for anybody who tries to oppose the central banks, they usually end up missing. And that's what I think makes Bitcoin so powerful, is like there is no face behind it. There's tens of millions of faces who are all actively trying to change the world. And I think that's pretty special.
Yeah. And one thing, like, I guess like a little failure story of mine about Bitcoin back in 2017, 2018, when I started the crypto or like the blockchain meetup, was at the time I was like, I'm too late to Bitcoin, obviously, because it's thousands of dollars a coin. I'm going to outsmart it. So like one of the things you often hear in business is like, you don't want to be a gold miner. You want to sell a shovel to the gold miners. So I was like, I bought a Bitcoin ATM. I was like, I'm going to set up this Bitcoin ATM. I'll make money off of it. And I should have just bought the Bitcoin. I should have spent the $3,000 getting a coin back then or whatever it was versus like doing that. And again, that's where that I understand that this is a truly unique innovation, right? It's a one of one, virgin birth, whatever you want to frame it as. And that's where that humility of approaching it, because like these 0 to 1 opportunities like are just so mind blowing that like you do need to invest that time to get it.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people is I actually have a video that I'm working on right now, and I called it the biggest wealth transfer of all time. I don't know if you guys know him, but there's a guy named Prof Plum on X. His name is Michael Green. I was just doing some research on him. There's another guy named Steve Hanke, another guy named Peter Schiff. I'm sure you know him. The crazy thing is that all these people discovered Bitcoin so early, and they're so proud that they've had that belief since the beginning. Like this guy, the guy I was talking about, Mike Green, he discovered Bitcoin at $25 in 2012, and he's said that it's going to zero since then. He's been consistent. He's just had that belief, and he hasn't changed it. Like how, I don't know. To me, it just shows that the person who has that belief is a little stupid. Because I mean, the fact that since 2012, okay, 2012, that's fine. That's reasonable. Okay, you think it's going to zero. That's fine. Okay, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, all these things happened. 2023, ETFs started saying that they want to, like, Wall Street has accepted Bitcoin, and you're still saying it's going to zero. Like, to me, that's crazy. It's ego. It's like you guys were just talking about here. It's people not wanting to put in the time. People just not caring. And when you're a real estate investor, and it may be hard for you to think about something digital as having value, you have to put in the time. That's the thing. Like, you're a real estate investor and you changed your mind because I consider you, just off that, I consider you to be an intelligent person, because you can see that, okay, maybe I was wrong.
Yeah. And like I would even say like I would frame it slightly different, like suboptimal, right? Like as in just like, hey, again, like real estate did me really well, so I'm not trying to throw like stones at it or anything of that nature. But like for what my ultimate purpose was, it wasn't the end all be all, right? And again, I think that's where you often see where people's bags are with like a Peter Schiff, let's say, or individuals that just refuse to approach Bitcoin and embrace the novelty of this once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Just before we go any further here, fellas, a couple different things. I know we've kind of just been uninterrupted here, which I think is exactly what we wanted today. Rajat's been pretty busy keeping up with some of the comments in the chat. Haven't been looking at them at all, so I apologize for that in the chat. But maybe we'll spend like the last maybe 15, 20 minutes. If anybody has any specific questions for Matt, just throw them in the chat and either send like a zap or put a super chat or put them in caps, and we'll kind of go through those in the next little while here. I want to say a big shout out to the people watching on Nostr right now. We got a 100 sat zap from B3P0, and somebody just sent, 1,000 sats, said, great show. Happy Friday. All greetings from Iceland.
Wow.
Wow. That's pretty badass. So the other thing I was going to say there is, what the hell was it now? Real estate. That's what it was, Matt. So real estate is kind of active in a sense where, you have to maintain it. You got to keep it up. You got to look after your tenants, all these different things, which can be good and bad, more active for sure. But what do you use Bitcoin for now? Like, do you spend it? Do you lend against it? Is it just kind of sitting there as an insurance policy? And so how are you using it today? And also, how do you plan on using it in the future?
Yeah. And each person can approach this their own way, but for me, it really is just that financial fortress of solitude. So it's like my FU money. You literally can never make me do anything again for the rest of my life now. Like, it's there. And again, like, I think you need to either really understand Bitcoin or spend a lot of time with it. But like, it doesn't matter to me if I lose my keys. Like, I don't want that to happen, but like the idea of Bitcoin is so much bigger, in my opinion, than even me having Bitcoin. And because
Yeah.
again, like I like a little tangential story, like I really like fair games. The moment I learn someone's cheating in a game, I just have zero interest in interacting. So like growing up, high school, we used to play euchre every day at lunch and stuff like that, or like in a spare class. And I was playing with a good friend one day, and all of a sudden I saw he reneged. I was like, oh, sorry. He reneged, like, you guys win this hand or whatever. And then like after that, I was like, what? Why are you blowing my shit up? Like we were crushing. I was like, wait, like you cheat? He was like, I win. And I was like, oh, like we're never playing again. I just like zero interest in it, just lost my entire appetite for playing that game. And so like for Bitcoin, like the fact that we truly got a fair game just like makes such a world of difference from my approach to everything in life. Now, with like actually how I use Bitcoin, if I needed to increase my lifestyle, I would sell it. Like I think one of the things, again, I think sometimes Bitcoiners get captured by is this idea of like I can never sell a sat, or like my entire value as a human being is based upon the count of sats I've got in cold storage or something of that nature. In my opinion, and again, you guys push back on this if you disagree, but like if the biggest thing you do in your life or the only value you create is from Bitcoin appreciation, like I think that's a shitty life. Like I think that Bitcoin should be like the platform, not the end all be all to these things. But again, like having that ability to actually truly play a fair game when it comes to personal finances is just so revolutionary that's why like I want to evangelize and like talk to people about Bitcoin and orange pill them. And like the reason that you'll spend time with that second cousin twice removed and help them set up a cold storage is because like I want to have that influence. Because one of the things I talked about a lot back in my real estate investing days was like I wanted impact, right? So like once I got enough money, it was more about like how can I help others? The joke I used to make is like at my funeral, I want there to be scalpers, as in like I impacted so many lives that people want good seats at my funeral. I literally don't care if anyone shows up, but like it's that type of impact that's important to me. And so again, Bitcoin's more just the opportunity where I don't have to worry about money anymore, right? Like I don't even have to pay attention to the stock market to make sure I'm keeping up with inflation. I don't have to worry about actively managing real estate, or again, even when you build up like a big real estate portfolio like I did, like I'm never answering the phone call, but you still have property managers and you still have to answer their phone calls. And that still like slowly bleeds away certain energy and time. And like there got to be a point in my life where I just hated my cell phone. Where like it's just like no one's calling me for good shit, right? Like they're calling because I gotta solve problems or I gotta make a decision. And so Bitcoin's really allowed me to completely reinvent that, and where I can spend like months if I want on a flight of fancy project and go deep down it. So that's really what's powerful to me. And again, that's where the idea of like resort hacking or house hacking is so important, I think, for Bitcoiners, because a lot of Bitcoiners are great at delayed gratification, at passing the marshmallow test, and like tip the hat to you guys. But like that shouldn't be the end all be all unless like there's the next step to it, right? And again, that can be for family, for your definition of impact, things of that nature. So to me, Bitcoin really just allows me to not have to pay attention to anything but things I want to pay attention to.
Yeah, I agree with you. Money it's just a tool, right? It's just a
Mm-hmm.
way for you to get to financial freedom. And then once you're in financial freedom, that money has to be spent, right? You can't just stare at your screen all day thinking that, oh, yeah, my Bitcoin's grown, so I've had an impact. You haven't. Just you holding on to Bitcoin hasn't changed anything. It's just, at the end of the day, it's just money. Money doesn't have, Bitcoin is the best form of money because it doesn't have any utility. I think that's something that people can't grasp. It's because you're not taking something away from somebody else by holding that Bitcoin. I think that's the greatest thing about it. Whereas with, let's say, real estate, you have to take away houses from other people in order to accumulate your own houses. That's something that bothers me about real estate. With Bitcoin, what it does is it absorbs all of the speculation from everything else. Bitcoin is the only speculative tool that you need. But then that's the thing, right? When you're buying Bitcoin, you expect it to go up over time. You should be able to enjoy your life if you're going to buy that Bitcoin, if you're going to own that Bitcoin. What's the point of owning Bitcoin if you're like, I had a client who was, I think he was about 40 and his wife was in her mid 30s, and they had a lot of Bitcoin. For somebody that young, they had like 12 Bitcoin, which is pretty crazy, right? I mean, for somebody that young, this was recent, so it was worth like $1 million and in US dollars. So they were thinking how they were telling me how they've never gone on vacation. They haven't spent time going to like on a trip or anything, and they want to be able to have a certain amount. They want to have like $5 million or something to do that. And I told them that you already have the money. You can enjoy your life if you want to. You don't have to keep just stacking and stacking. They both had great jobs. They were both working still, and they barely had time to spend with each other. And they had all this money. What's the point of that? What's the point of you married this person, you love them clearly, you want to spend time with them, but you're still going to work when you don't need to? One of them could have gone part-time at the end, and the good thing is after they spoke to me, they actually one of them did the wife did go part-time, and she figured out that she doesn't need to work as much as she is. She started spending more time on with her kids, and I'm sure they haven't gone back to me in the last couple months or so. I'm sure they went on a trip or two.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a good. I feel like this is such a valuable conversation for people. I mean, first of all, Matt, you said something that is probably the most Bitcoiner thing I've ever heard before. Where you said, "I don't even care if I lose my keys. I just care that the game is fair," and that's so true, man. Like that one hit me hard because it's like it's so true. Because if you compare the fiat system to the Bitcoin system, yes, there's a lot more personal responsibility, which is a pro and a con. But if I lost everything in the fiat system, even if I managed to get it back, I know that that system is going to forever steal from me. Whereas in the Bitcoin system, because of how it's designed, because of how fair it is, I know that even if I lost my Bitcoin, whatever I got back, I could actually maintain that for myself forever. Nobody can steal anything from me in that system. And that is just such a huge shift in society. Like it goes back to everything that fiat has been the root cause of every issue in society, and it's because it's rigged. It's not a fair system to play in. The other thing too, though, I think that what you guys are talking about here, I actually spent some time on the live stream this morning talking about this, but I just was thinking recently, like most Bitcoiners have, most Bitcoiners are visionaries. That's how I see them, because they have the ability to see into the future, see a future where Bitcoin is what they kind of think it is. And a lot of people don't have that ability to do that. They see things in like months and years, maybe. But I feel like a lot of Bitcoiners have the ability to see decades into the future. And there's so many Bitcoiners who are working their ass off, working as hard as they possibly can, trying to get as many sats as they possibly can, which is a good thing. But the component to that I think that they're missing is like, if Bitcoin plays out the way that we think it's going to, whatever amount that they have today, they're going to need a fraction of that in the future. Like whoever they pass their Bitcoin down to, whether it's their kids and even more so their kids in the future, they're going to need a fraction of that. And I just feel like Bitcoiners need to put themselves first a little bit more in a lot of ways. That they want to do better for society. They want to do better for their bloodline. They see Bitcoin as generational wealth, but they forget that they're the main character in this movie, and they need to spend some of that and enjoy some of that hard work that they've put in and spend some Bitcoin or lend against it, but enjoy themselves. Because I think that it's just a fallacy that they think that somebody in 100 years from now in their bloodline is going to say, "Oh, thank God Jor was had a YouTube channel talking about Bitcoin 2025." Like maybe, but that might also not ever happen. So why not just enjoy what you have today and actually spend some of the things that you have accrued in this lifetime? It's not to see who can get the most Bitcoin. It's, I think, who can have the most fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
agree. And I think that, like, to me, the distinction there is I like to call it like conscious consumption. So
Yeah.
like just like blindly consuming or being like, well, I've got all this money, so I should go get a private jet or a Lambo or whatever. Like again, if that's something that like you've built up in your head and you like had delayed gratification towards, and like it's a symbol that's going to bring you true joy, absolutely, you do you. But at the same time, just being conscious of it, it's just such a radical shift for most people. The same way that like you should be conscious when you're eating or like doing almost anything in your life, and that's going to bring you a lot more joy from it. So again, like frugality and cheapness are two very different things in my opinion. Frugality is looking for value. Cheapness is like pinching pennies. And so again, if you guys are in a phase where you just found Bitcoin and you go a little bit too far on the cheapness side, I get it. So I'm not going to judge, but like eventually you're going to want to find a better balance and towards conscious consumption.
Yeah. I think the best thing that you can do is just create so much value that you never have to sell your Bitcoin. That's it. Like just
Yeah.
Yeah.
serve so
Well,
many people, like help so many people to achieve their dreams so that they're willing to pay you so that you never have to sell your Bitcoin.
Yeah, and one thing I think a lot of people misinterpret about retirement or like pulling back is like it's not like the goal is to literally never do anything again or to never generate value again. It's just to do it on your terms.
Yeah.
And like once you get good at generating value, you can always choose to capture a portion of it, right? But like I think what ends up happening, people is like, I want to retire and then never have to do anything again and literally just like pretty much be in the matrix, right? And like just have the food pumped into me and like not even it's like no, like what you want to do is like do projects that are meaningful to you, right? And have impact with people that are meaningful to you. And so again, that's where like price talk or what's going on with strategy B and things like that. Like it's all interesting and like I don't grudge anyone that wants that, but like just don't have that be the only focus of your Bitcoin journey.
Yeah. Great segment there. I think we're gonna have a couple clips here to share with the future. A couple different things here before we go further. Cedar Sats looks like we got a couple different zaps. Cedar Sats zapped 3333, a row of boobs. Great show as always, and says great job, Matt. And also sent 3333 on Coinos and said thanks for the great content as always, Cedar. We got 3690 from Alex. Happy Friday. Thanks, guys. Love this conversation. Alex. And we got one from Ballsy Golf here, 88 sats. Good number there. And then two 2500s. I think those might be from Clean Your Machine Inc. in the chat there. So thanks for all the support. Sounds like people are enjoying the chat today.
That's awesome.
Where should we go from here? Rajat, you got any
Matt, I want to
questions
mention
burning?
I just want to mention somebody in the comments. They were part of your group. Your cash flow clan. What is it? Cash flow
tribe was one of my businesses.
Tribe, yeah. Yep. Did you see the comment from him? His name is Clean Your Machine Official.
Oh,
no, I didn't, but that's cool.
Yeah, so he's been saying that. He said he was part of your. He's a huge fan of you.
Awesome.
He actually mentioned you by name, so
totally appreciate it. If you're following me on the IG, shoot me a DM. That's where I'm most active. And again, just appreciate the love. But it's great that, when I originally started changing my content over to more Bitcoin and freedom oriented stuff, I would say probably 90% of my real estate followers were not having it. So it means a lot that there were a handful that were willing to ride or die with me and give me the benefit of the doubt.
I actually had the exact same experience. So I was posting on Instagram and Twitter before I really studied Bitcoin. And I think I had 110 or 115,000 followers on Instagram and then maybe 60,000 on Twitter. As soon as I started posting about Bitcoin, 25 to 30K immediately unfollowed.
It's wild.
Pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your guys' thoughts on this today because it's something that I found very interesting. I think this is kind of where things are at right now in terms of Bitcoin. We're talking about all the real estate people. We're talking about how misunderstood and mispriced Bitcoin is. I want to share this with you guys. Maybe you might have seen this from earlier today, but I think this is the perfect thing because last week when the exchange rate of Bitcoin was, I think it was like all the way down to 84. What was the price last week, Rajat, when we were having our show?
Probably like 84, 85.
Yeah. So we were getting attacked pretty heavily in the comments. But I found this Venn diagram. Actually, NVK shared it on Noster today. And I just think that this is incredibly accurate. And this is something we might start doing here on the show where if it's, there's a couple of haters we have in the chat here, but maybe we'll invite them up on the stage and say, if you can explain the Bitcoin difficulty adjustment and you still hold these opinions, then we'll actually take them into credit. So this to me just kind of explains how misunderstood Bitcoin is, because I just think that the percentage of the population that could understand the difficulty adjustment, which to me is like the secret sauce of Bitcoin. And I feel like once you understand that, that's where kind of the unlock is in Bitcoin. But what do you guys think about this? Oh, Rajat's got another one here, another Venn.
Yeah, I made this one.
Oh, hold on. I got to remove this one.
Sure, yeah. I thought this one was funny. I thought this one was funny because I called out a couple people on it too. I called out, who did I call out? Oh, I asked where Steve Hankey, this guy, Peter Schiff, and Goldseek sit on it. And then Goldseek is the only one who responded. He's like, oh, I understand it. I just don't want, what do you say? I just don't want a digital fax machine or something.
And that's kind of, yeah, that's my theory on it, is I just think that there's so few people who actually understand what Bitcoin is and who could actually understand or explain the difficulty adjustment.
Yeah.
That it just shows how mispriced this asset is. And to me, when people are considering then, like compared to gold, compared to real estate, compared to the S&P, everybody knows what those assets are. So I would say that if that's the case, then they're pretty fairly valued. Whereas Bitcoin, this is kind of like the unlock for me. If you can explain the difficulty adjustment, I would say that you understand Bitcoin. And it's just such a small percent. So if that's true, that there's such a small percentage of the population that understands it, then how could it be anywhere near fairly valued? Like what do you think about that, Matt?
Yeah, I definitely understand the sentiment. And I think I've heard you guys chat before about the idea of like, everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve and stuff. And I am a big believer in that, simply because, uh, like, any opportunity I've ever really got to take advantage of, like, it first started with humility of like being willing to learn, right? So again, with real estate, like, I was a CPA. I can remember this so vividly. Like, I still hadn't got my license at that point in time, so like, studying for the UFI and things of that nature. And I was telling to the my senior manager at the time that like, oh, I want to buy like a rental property near Fanshawe College and rent it out to students, and like, I did this cash flow and I know it's going to make X amount. And he was just like, that's a terrible idea. Do you want to be cleaning toilets at midnight? I was like, uh, you didn't even look at my spreadsheet. And it's like, I feel very similarly about Bitcoin when people are just like, are immediately dismissing of it like magic internet money. And I actually love that term, but like for positive reasons versus the negative connotation that sometimes is used with it. But it's just like, yeah, like everything, it's information asymmetry that creates an opportunity. And so right now, the biggest information asymmetry is that people are either unwilling or unable to understand Bitcoin and the concept of like true digital scarcity. And so because of that, like, it does represent a huge upside to people that are willing to humbly approach it now and invest that time in order to get on the right side of that information asymmetry. So that to me, and that's true of anything, right? With real estate investing, with stock investing, with like any sort of thing, like ultimately you're either gambling or you've got information asymmetry that you're making a decision based upon.
I think that's the wealth transfer, right? Like, let's say you have some baby boomer who has $5 million worth of gold. Today, that $5 million worth of gold is worth like 50 Bitcoin. At some point, that 50 Bitcoin or that $5 million worth of gold is going to be worth 40 Bitcoin. It's going to be worth 30 Bitcoin, then 20, then 10. So somebody who, let's say he put his entire life into buying Bitcoin or into buying gold, ounces of gold. He has it at his house. He's secured it and all that. But then somebody else who bought, let's say, $20,000 worth of Bitcoin a few years ago, that $20,000 will buy $5 million worth of value, at least to that person, right? He put in 20,000, and at some point he'll be able to buy that entire stack of gold that the other that baby boomer has. And that's the asymmetric part of this, where if you put in the time, like, gold is something that everybody wants, everybody already accepts, everybody's already gotten it, like they figured it out. Nobody's figured out Bitcoin. That's when the asymmetric opportunity happens, where nobody knows what it is, nobody understands it, and everybody actually needs it. That's the key. Everybody needs Bitcoin.
Yeah. It's a solution for 8 billion people.
Yeah.
Keep saying that, but it's one of those things. I like saying things so often that it just kind of drills into people's heads. And that's one of them for sure. So we got a couple different things here that I wanted to say here. We got about 10 minutes left on the stream here. We're going to be hopping over to the Maple Bitcoin School happy hour. Matt has agreed to join us over there, so I think it's going to be a really good chat. We might get to dive deeper into a couple different topics over there. But Forrest, Rajat, and I decided the other day that we're actually going to start in 2026. We're going to be exclusively streaming on the Maple Bitcoin channel. So we wanted to give people kind of a heads up. Right now, we're doing it on my channel, Rajat's channel, Forrest's channel, and Maple. But we just think it makes more sense for everybody to be kind of in the same live chat. It just works better that way. So we want to give people a lot of notice. We're going to announce it probably for the next month. And then starting in 2026, we're just going to be doing these live streams exclusively on the Maple Bitcoin channel. So what we would say is, like, don't wait in case you forget or procrastinate. You can just go over there and subscribe right now and turn on the notifications. So when we do go live in 2026, you're not going to miss the, I just shared it in the message there to you, Rajat. You're not going to miss the streams. What else was I going to say? Oh, Matt, in terms of like professional development, I feel like that's been one of the keys to your success, really, is like in choosing to invest in yourself.
Sharpening your tools.
Yeah. And Matt's part of the Visionaries community. I'm sure he's going to be part of the Maple Bitcoin community in the future. And one thing we got going in there is a club that reads books. I don't like calling it a book club because it sounds kind of lame, but a club that reads books. And from your perspective, so you've read a lot of books, you've gone through a lot of these things. I guess what's been the best investment for you in yourself, and also what book has really opened your eyes more than anything else? And it doesn't really have to be specific to Bitcoin. It can be kind of any book you've read along the way.
Yeah. And so first things first, books, are able to distill down so much information. Like a person can take their entire life and distill it down into a book. And like you can literally learn from their experiences rather than having to go through the school of hard knocks. That has been like a superpower of mine, just like always being a book nerd. And so then being exposed to just all these concepts and ideas. I'd be hard pressed to come up with the single book. I'll give you one or two, but I think the ultimate thing is just like enjoying the process, right? So before like discovering Bitcoin, literally the most portable form of wealth I could come up with was my intelligence, right? Or like my skill sets or things of that nature. That felt like something that would be very difficult to take away from me.
Right.
And so that's why like the idea of leveling up. One little hack that I do think is very useful for people to consider is like I've had an Audible subscription now for like 10 years. And just because like every month I get a credit, it's kind of an excuse to go find a book and listen to it. And before we wrap up, I'll pull it up because like the stats are actually absurd on how many hours I've listened to audiobooks. But
what's that cost per month, Matt, Audible?
I think when I started, it was like $10 Canadian. It might be close to $20 Canadian now because inflation and those sort of games. But essentially, like I really live my life by this Buddhist quote that when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And when the student's truly ready, the teacher will disappear. And so the thing is, like, all the information you ever need to learn about Bitcoin is already out there. And before I started my real estate YouTube channel, all the information you ever needed to be a successful real estate investor was already out there. But the problem was you weren't looking for it, right? Like you hadn't decided to become a student. And so because of that, you couldn't find a teacher. And then truly, once you actually decide to become that person, you no longer even need a guru because like you're just going to become the person that decides to want to level up, to become a better person, whatever you define it as. And so that to me, just like being conscious of that and then leaning into that has been like transformative for myself. And again, I would encourage anyone, like, a lot of people like, I've never been a reader or whatever, audiobooks, right? Yeah. And like, I don't like audiobooks. Okay, well, like get an e-reader. There's literally no excuses in my opinion for not exposing yourself to high quality information because it's so cheap. It's almost always free out there, but you do have to choose to become the person that wants to learn, to lean into those opportunities. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And as far as like books, one book, if anyone's struggling with spending or getting their personal finances in order, Early Retirement Extreme. It's a very niche book, but if you're kind of like an engineer, if you're rational, if you're a logical individual, this will absolutely change your relationship with money. It's the book I've given the second most copies out of. So like I stopped keeping track, but it's over 150 copies I've given out. The only book that supersedes that is the Bitcoin Standard. So I've given out like over 200 copies now of the Bitcoin Standard. And again, that's just like, that's my language, is books and knowledge and information. So that's why I'm giving those out. But those are like two books that I feel very confident recommending to people. But like, just again, find a book that works for you and start building momentum, right? Like have it become a habit, have it become a practice, have it start to become part of your personal identity, that you're the book nerd or you're the audiobook nerd or whatever the case may be, and lean into that because it's definitely served me well. Again, outside of Bitcoin, it's going to be the most like a portable form of wealth that you're going to be able to expose yourself to. But yeah, so if you guys just humor me here, I've had my Audible subscription since 2018, I guess. So not quite 10 years. But essentially, if I look at listening stats over the totality of my life, I've spent 2 months, 4 days, 7 hours, and 44 minutes just listening to audiobooks. And like,
Wow.
I wouldn't be the same person if I didn't do that. And again, like probably audiobooks represent 50% of like the book content I consume. So it is a big portion, but it's not the totality of it. But like, I just, think about if you'd spent 2 months over the last 10 years listening to audiobooks, like I guarantee you would think differently and approach life differently. Now, again, be careful, like try and consume good information because there is like, you can definitely poison your brain as well. But it just be a lifelong learner, right? And again, the education system's just so terrible and like trains people to hate learning and education and all that. And like, you just need to become a self-learner, I think, in this day and age.
I think one of the greatest things about reading and learning and just figuring out, just getting that knowledge is that if you do have, let's say what you mentioned, toxic books, like books that aren't actually adding value, you're able to actually filter them out. You're able to filter out the bullshit. Like there was this book called, there was this book that I read called Let Them Eat Crypto. And the guy, I think the guy had no idea what he was talking about. Can you imagine making a book about something that you don't even know? Like, it's crazy. So luckily I had discovered Bitcoin before that, and I'd put in the time to learn about what it is. I went through the book, I skimmed through it, and there was so much just bullshit in it. It was crazy. Like this guy spent probably years writing this book about something that he hated. Like, why even put in the effort?
No
When
doubt.
clearly you didn't study it, right? But that's the thing. When you read these books, when you like, let's say when you read the Bitcoin Standard, you'll be able to figure out how to filter out the bullshit from other, from people who don't actually understand Bitcoin.
Yeah. Great points there. I think that reading is such an underrated thing. And Matt, I've never really thought about that before. Like earlier in the show, we talked about the portability of Bitcoin compared to real estate, being able to hop on an airplane with Bitcoin. That you can't do that with gold or stocks or real estate. But your skills and your knowledge, that's something that you can take on an airplane. And no matter where you end up in the world, you can use those skills. I've never thought about it that way. That's pretty cool. One thing I've started to implement into my life, I've always struggled with just being consistent with it. I would read half a book and then kind of get tired of it because maybe it's an irrelevant chapter to me, and then I get into something else and then I pick it up 4 months later. But I just started every morning now, whether it's 10 or 15 minutes. I think the best thing you can do is just like build it into your day. Like at a certain time of the day, whether it's right when you wake up or like 7 a.m. or 9 p.m., just kind of start doing it every day. And I guarantee if you do it for like a month or two, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, it doesn't matter how long it is. It's just the fact that you're doing it every day. That's one thing that's really helped me read more books.
Yeah, great advice. And another like piece of advice I've heard often, I think this came out of originally 75 Hard, which was like a personal development challenge that a lot of people got into maybe 5 years ago, was the idea of like, just do 10 pages a day, right? Or 10 minutes, as you're saying, George. Like you don't have to immediately become the guy that reads 10 books a month. Like you totally don't have to do that. But like even reading that 10 minutes or those 10 pages a day, that's you taking the first step on the hero's journey towards becoming the guy that you want to be.
Bingo. Well, what a chat today. We might have to make Matt our honorary fourth when one of us is gone. I just feel like it helps that you're Canadian too. That was kind of our criteria when we were looking for a fourth. Got to be aligned with the Maple.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Small Batch Steve. He's zapped 21 sats and then 1,000 sats. Said test dropping in views. This works very well. Keep going and check out shop.sbasp.com. There are a few pre-sale jars remaining. Small Batch Steve. I wonder what that is. Sounds interesting. I'm going to copy that. Steve. Check out shop.sbasp.com. So usually we wouldn't promote things, but Small Batch Steve sent us a zap. So you send us a zap, you get to dictate what we say, just like Ron Burgundy. So shared it in the chat there. All right. So final call there. Yeah, Rajat put it up on screen here. Subscribe to the Maple. You still got a month, but you might as well do it now so you're not scrambling and wondering where we are in January. We also got the school community. We're going to jump over there in about 1 or 2 minutes from now so you can join for our happy hour. We still have the free trial on. We might be changing that in the future, but we'll see. Unfortunately, we don't have any Black Friday events because we think that it's criminally underpriced as it is to become a member of Maple Bitcoin. So yeah, hop over. You can scan the QR code. Rajat, Matt, myself, we're going to be hanging out with the crew over there. I think it's going to be an interesting one today. And yeah, do you guys have any final thoughts? Matt, maybe we'll give you a minute or two to let people know where they can find you and if they want to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, totally. Appreciate you guys asking me to come on. It's always great to hang out with fellow Bitcoiners and particularly Canadian Bitcoiners, as you highlighted. The only call to action I'll leave with you guys is one of the passion projects that I've been working on for the last year is a fictional audio drama. So think of it as like an audio play that you used to listen to on the radio, right? As a family, like back in the 30s or 40s. Essentially, it's called Mysteries of the Bitcoin Citadel, completely free, zero ads, no paywall, no nothing. It's just, it's me really like at the start of the year, I wrote an essay called The Bitcoin Friend Thesis, where I laid out that I literally do believe Bitcoin friendships are the only thing likely to outperform Bitcoin. And obviously, that's personal interpretation there, but that is my belief. And so I just wanted to start planting the flag and start contributing to Bitcoin culture. So you guys can listen to it on Fountain or any podcast app. Again, completely free. We try and orange pill people in a natural way. And if you do listen to it, like, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram and just let me know, because it's tons of fun to get to connect with more Bitcoiners. But again, it's so important that people be creating content for Bitcoin, contributing to the culture. As we said, if the only thing that you do in your life is hold Bitcoin and that's the only value you've ever done to society, I think that's kind of a wasted life. Use Bitcoin as a platform to do more.
Great advice. Great advice. I had a question there. I forget what it was now. Oh yeah, your blog. You've wrote a couple really good blogs. What's that one with about the town?
Yeah, so there's a essay series inspired by Alex Svetsky. So if anyone's not familiar with him, he's a great writer in general. Again, he maybe has some political opinions you may not agree with, but like it's worth exploring and challenging yourself. But he wrote an essay called The Remnant. And it was about how Bitcoiners matter, the remnant matters, but everyone else doesn't. And essentially in this essay, I wanted to build upon it and talk about how, in my opinion, Canadian culture, I think, is due for a revitalization, and I hope that it begins in the small town. So I grew up in a rural area. Right now, this call is from my parents' farm, where it's a century farm. So it's been the family for over 100 years. And there's a certain level of connectedness that I think that we've lost in our communities when you live just in a big box McMansion, a suburb, and you never talk to your neighbors and things of that nature. And so I want to lay out a thesis where I think that Bitcoiners in particular are well positioned. Like, let's 6 of us crew up together, pick a small town in random anywhere Canada, and like let's build the communities that we want to see, right? And part of it's a byproduct of when I bought my Citadel. It's in the middle of nowhere, moved up there, and all of a sudden I discovered these really neat communities. So there's all kinds, like it was naturally kind of a freedom oriented area that I moved to, and there's reasons behind that. But essentially, like the homeschool, home pod schooling, like all these cool things. But you do need a certain level of critical mass. So again, if anyone's interested, you can just like Google The Remnant builds again, and that'll take you to it. Or hit me up on any sort of platform, and I'll show you it. But again, Substack, there's no paywall, no nothing. It's just me wanting to explore these ideas that are rattling around my head.
So probably after the Maple Bitcoin Happy Hour call, I'll be sure to put Matt's Twitter handle. I'll put the link to the Mysteries of Bitcoin Citadel, and then we'll put some blogs in there if you want to look into this. Actually, maybe we'll start the call with Maple Bitcoin Happy Hour talking about that. I think it's such a fascinating idea, the idea of essentially starting your own Citadel in just some random small town. I want to learn a little bit more about that. So thanks very much, everybody. Big shout out to everybody who sent in some sats. We really appreciate the support. We want to keep this channel sponsorless for as long as we can. So it definitely helps. So thanks, Rajat. Thanks, Matt. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, guys.